how long does it take me to become really good at a skill, like become a master? 10,000 hours, that's about 10 years of solid work. But then this guy in the TED Talk came along and he said, well, what if I don't want to be a master? What if I just want to be proficient at that skill? What he learned was if you break that skill down to its basics, and then you work on it in a very structured period for like 40 minutes a day, at the end of 30 days, you are proficient at that skill. So that's what I've done in my teaching. When I get someone in that, I said, look, you have 30 days. You want to commit to 40 minutes a day for 30 days. You will be a proficient golfer. You will have some control over your golf ball. You'll understand how much power and how to finesse the ball around the golf course, and you can become adept at playing this game. But again, like anything, you have to commit some time to it. It's not going to be just because you pay me $500 for the afternoon to teach you that I can somehow wave a wand over you and you're going to be the greatest golfer in the world. It's not going to happen.
Golf Smarter number 766. Peaceful Golf, a journey into the unknown with author and teacher Noah Pilipski.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast, Noah.
Hi, Fred. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for agreeing to join us. I got an email from a listener saying, you got to talk to Noah. I think that he's going to connect with the audience because of not only of your book and your website and your Instagram channel and your YouTube videos, but I need to know, where am I talking to you right now? Where are you?
Currently, I'm in Croatia, in the area of Istria, which is northern Croatia.
Are you there to play golf?
I just played golf yesterday. I just played at a golf course called Golf Club Adriatic. There are only 4 golf courses in the entire country. So, and 2 of them are really not golf courses. There's really only 2 actual golf courses. And that's what I played yesterday. It was the first one of the 2 that I'm going to play.
We actually, I think it was 2008, that the Golf Smarter community, we got together and we went to Prague. And there are not a lot of golf courses there either. Was this golf course crowded? I mean, in a country that doesn't have a lot of golf courses and isn't really known as a golf country, how crowded?
Well, this was there was no one there. It was there was one guy. There's 100 members at the club. It's a semi-private club. There are 100 members total, and I was the only guy out there for the day.
Wow. And how was the course?
Course was very good. It was decent design. The greens didn't quite have enough undulation for my liking, but all in all, for a country that doesn't have much golf, it was pretty solid.
Really, you're complaining about flat greens?
Yeah, I mean, as I've learned over the years, and as I've studied architecture, greens are like the faces of the golf course. So if the face is just kind of fresh and new, like a baby, it doesn't have much character yet. So when you look at the great courses around the world, they all have a lot of undulations and nooks and crannies, and those all make for the best greens. And it's like an old man's face. It's very weathered and worn and creates so many different possibilities. And that's the second half of the golf course to me.
Wow, interesting. And that's the part of the golf course that makes me the craziest.
Well,
right?
I think it was Ben Hogan that said there's golf and then there's putting. They're 2 different games, and that's very true.
Yeah, and to expand on that, I think there are actually 4 different games: off the tee, your approach shots, your short game, and putting. And it's a rare instance where all of them are in sync.
It's beautiful when it is, though.
Yeah. So then why are you in Croatia if it's not necessarily for golf?
COVID had kind of locked me down. I'm from New York City, and there was not much to do there. And we were heading into winter. And Croatia was one of the few countries that would allow you entrance without quarantining. So we decided to come over here and just kind of hunker down and do a lot of, Croatia is it's very natural. So there's lots of waterfalls, hiking. I love hiking. and a lot of exploring. We stayed on the Adriatic Sea and fished and took boat rides, and you can really isolate, but at the same time, really explore and challenge yourself and have a great time. I recommend Croatia for anyone that's an outdoor enthusiast, for sure.
I'll tell you, the one thing about 2020 that's hurt the most for me is not being able to travel. I really missed it.
Well, we had scheduled to be going to France for the summer, and that obviously got canceled. So it was plan B. I don't think I would have ever been to Croatia if it weren't for COVID, and I'm pleasantly surprised by what I found here.
Yeah, we had a trip scheduled for Morocco for next early spring, and that ain't happening. Yeah. So you are you in New York City proper, Manhattan, or are you?
Yes. I live on. Well, we spent the summer. We got out of town when the COVID first hit, and spent summer upstate, about an hour and a half north of the city, up near Monticello, New York. That's where I grew up, and that's where I learned golf. I grew up on a course called the Concord Monster, which was ranked in the top 100 golf courses in the world for a really long time. The course is currently gone. It's been totally bulldozed over. But right now, Reese Jones has come in. A casino purchased the land, and this is the closest casino to New York City now. And they're building a new Monster. So they've incorporated some of the holes from the original Monster, and adjacent to the Monster on this whole Concord area. I don't know if you're familiar with the Concord Resort, but it was a huge resort complex back in the 60s when you've seen the movie Dirty Dancing, I'm sure. So Dirty Dancing basically is about this whole area up there where you had all these hotels and the Borscht Belt where they had. Yes, exactly. And you had tons of golf. Every resort up there's probably 15 or 20 of them. Every resort had a golf course, and everyone was trying to outdo each other and get a better course. Well, since then, all these courses have gone away, and you're only left now with just the Concord still remaining as a resort with the casino, and they're building a new Monster. It's not called the Concord anymore. I forget the name of the casino, but they're building a new course, and Reese Jones is designing it. He's finished 9 holes. I went there this summer and checked it out. It looks really nice, but they haven't been able to complete the back 9 because COVID shut everything down. So that's what I did for the spring, and some of the summer I just spent my time up there playing at a couple local courses that I know, and I would be out there all day and there was nobody up there. It was kind of nice to just be separated from all the madness that was going on in New York.
Madness? What madness?
Madness.
So what is it
madness.
that you do in New York? The madness. What was that from Apocalypse Now? The horror. Okay, so what is it that you do in New York City? Is it golf?
Golf is. I used to be a teacher full time in golf, but I also, for my entire career, have also been a New York City stagehand. I am a prop master on many different shows, and when COVID hit, I was Broadway shows. I was working on Broadway at the time, and West Side Story. I was on West Side Story, and COVID hit, and everything got shut down.
Is that the new version of West Side Story, right? The modernized version?
Yes, correct.
I'm reading about that. Wow. We won't go into show tunes right now. Let's stick with golf just for a moment. So, what is peaceful golf?
Well, peaceful golf. The title of my book, Peaceful Golf: A Journey into the Unknown. It basically, the book chronicles my career as a beginning golfer at the age of 4 years old, learning the game, and how I progressed to be leading up to this. The book ends with one of my bigger accomplishments in golf, but even up to today, this last year during COVID, I was able to qualify for the New York State Open, and I was the #1 amateur qualifier for the New York State Open.
Congratulations.
I won the Danbury Amateur Championship this year. So I went from a complete amateur golf, beginner golfer, to all the way to playing at the highest level, and about how I achieved that through the understanding of the mind, not necessarily the mechanics of the golf swing. And so what I try to teach people, I guess I would call myself more of a golf philosopher, because I don't teach any mechanics at all. I have tossed mechanics out the window, because my big discovery came years ago. I was training with one of the best teachers in the world for golf mechanically. His name was David Lee, and he taught the gravity golf system. And I trained with him for years and got very good. Oh, okay.
Yeah, David and his son Daniel have both been on the show.
I was living with them for 6 years, so I know the family very well. And I just spoke to David yesterday. My goal was to become a professional golfer on tour, and I went and trained with David and put in all the hard work and time. And I just never could get to that next level where I felt comfortable under pressure, and just couldn't really elevate to that next level. And so I finally got frustrated with golf and teaching golf and the whole thing. And I finally just said, I've had enough, and I'm going to take a little break from golf. And so I took a few months off, about 6 months, I'd say. And when I came back to golf, a friend had called me and said, "Hey, would you mind? You want to go out and play some golf?" I said, it's been probably 4 or 5 months. Why not? So we went back to the golf course. And now this was the first time in my life that I'd had a break from golf since 4 years old, because from 4 years on, I'd always been playing golf. And so this little break, when I got back up to the tee for the first shot, I stood over the golf ball, and I had no idea what I was going to do, in the sense of I'd always been working on something. Someone from an early age, my father, anyone would always say, "Here's how you hold your grip. Here's how you have your stance. Get your weight on your back foot. Turn your hips. Pull your arms down." There was always some tip or some movement that I was working on to try to control the golf swing. And this was the first time that I'd ever walked up to the golf ball and didn't have an idea about what I was going to do. And it was at that moment that I had my little epiphany, my little insight into the game and the mind. And I said, well, what would happen if I swung this golf club and I didn't have anything controlling it? I didn't try to turn my hips. I didn't try to pull my arms. I didn't do anything. And that question was so prolific to me, because I didn't have the answer. Because before that, I'd always been working on something. And I said, well, the only way I'm going to find out is to try it. So here I go. I'm going to step up. I'm going to hold this club however my hands want to go and grip it. I'm going to take it back at whatever pace my body wants to move it back at. And I'm going to swing it. I might just shank it. I might miss it. I have no clue what's about to happen. I said, okay, set it up. And I ripped it back and ripped it through, and it went 300 yards right down the middle. And I said, wait a second. And on that day, even my friend playing me was like, whoa, we played this course a lot. I've never seen you hit it that far on this hole before. I said, I don't know what just happened. I said, but I'm curious to see. So for that hole, we played 9 holes. And on that day, I hit 3 flag sticks in 9 holes. And I said, wait a second, something is going on here. What I came to realize was that all that training that I had done over the years, I was covering up that training through thought and effort to try to control the training, instead of letting go of all the control and trusting that the body was trained to move properly. And so once I did that, I was able to play at a very high level and do really well. Then it became more of understanding how the mind worked. I remember in PGA qualifier for the PGA Tour in New York State, up at the Turning Stone Resort, I got to the course and I said, okay, let's see what happens. I don't have any expectations. I'm just going to go out here and play. And that day I was 5 under par through 13 holes. And that's the best I'd ever been in a qualifying event. I've never even come close to that before. And 13th hole comes, I just made another birdie, 5 under, and the kid next to me playing with me, he comes up to me, he goes, hey man, he goes, I can't believe I've never heard of you before. He was like, your game is incredible. How come I've never seen you before? Like, who are you? Like, what's going on here? And it was at that moment that my brain sabotaged me, because then I started thinking, yeah, what am I doing here? Like, I've never played this well before. Why am I playing so well? And it was on the next shot that I hit it out of bounds, and I ended up coming in even par for the day. And waiting at the clubhouse to see if I'd made it or not was Lee Jansen, because he had shot 1 under and he had qualified and I had missed it. And I was like, I've got to understand what's going on with this mind, because this is the really powerful tool in the golf swing. And so I began the process of trying to understand our limitations through understanding the mind, and how it limits us and how it can help us, and how to channel that and become the best golfer that we can be. There's always going to be limitations physically, but mentally, I see way more limitations. I played in a lot of mini tours and different events, and I see so many guys with so much talent that they could play on the PGA Tour tomorrow, but they don't have the mental understanding how to channel that, harness that power, and really use it under the pressure of the bright lights. And you just see so many guys fall apart under pressure. And that's the key to the game, is how do you perform under pressure? Do you succumb to it? I mean, how many guys hit the ball great on the range and then walk to the first tee and can't hit it? You see it all the time. I've seen it. Yeah, exactly. You see it too. So that's peaceful golf. Peaceful golf is about me teaching you how to break through those chains of mental control and getting into freedom. So I guess my question to you would be, what does the word freedom mean to you? If I asked you to describe it for yourself.
Freedom to me means that I can say, we'll be back after this commercial. There won't be a political ad, finally, right after this. Okay, so I said no more political ads. Well, that may not be the case if you still live in Georgia, and I apologize. I have no control over these ads. And so people who are writing reviews about political ads on the show, I can't do anything about it. And are you reviewing me, or are you reviewing the ads? I don't get that. It doesn't matter. But if you're a fan of Golf Smarter, you're here. And you enjoy hearing these past episodes to learn more from our guests, then don't miss our other podcast, Golf Smarter Mulligans, your second chance to gain insights from the best instructors featured on Golf Smarter. This week's episode is the first of two that ranks highly when asked about my favorite conversations. Fred Shoemaker of Extraordinary Golf. He has a huge following, but unlike most golf instructors that have a lot of students, his followers are devotees. The Extraordinary Golf Schools are educational experiences which can be transformational.
I came back from the Peace Corps in 1982, and I decided to coach golf here in the Bay Area. So I went to a couple places and said, I got this idea about coaching golf. And they said, okay. So when I started, my intention was to empower people, enliven them, and enable them. It was about self-coaching. So in my first month, I probably got only 10 lessons. But after a while, I and the folks who were at the lesson really enjoyed having people learn how to coach themselves, empowering them because they were worthy of it. I mean, they really could begin to discover for themselves and feel for themselves and sense for themselves and to know where things are, rather than having a coach always have to say things. And I found that after 3 months, my lesson book was full. And after a year of being there, there was a 6-week waiting list. And this is not because I knew a lot of stuff. It's because of the nature of empowerment itself. People who get a sense of what's possible for them, see a whole new range about what more is possible for them. And I love that, actually.
That's episode 82 of Golf Smarter Mulligans podcast, featuring part 1 of an hour with Fred Shoemaker, author of Extraordinary Golf and Extraordinary Putting, released this Friday. Both Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans are free and available wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please subscribe, and when you do, you'll be notified immediately when a brand new episode of either has downloaded to your favorite podcast app. And while we're at it, let me tell you that I have 2 apps to recommend. First is iHeartRadio. Sure, you've heard of them. Well, they just took ownership of Spreaker, which is the company that distributes Golf Smarter. So now we're in the iHeartRadio family. The other is a new app that allows... Actually, it puts social media with podcasting so that you can share the podcasts that you're listening to or episodes that you like specifically. It's called Good Pods. One word, Good Pods. And it's available for free in your Apple or Android app store. And they're highlighting Golf Smarter this week. All right, what does freedom mean to me? On the golf course, of course, we're talking about what is freedom mean to me.
That's where I try to, I'm more, my book is not about golf. It's about golf, but we can use this for any activity, anything in life. This is why I say I'm more of a philosopher than a golf teacher per se. I'm trying to show you that the limitations aren't only in golf, they're in life as well. So when I say freedom carries over for anything that we're talking about, but we're going to use golf I use golf as the vessel in which I communicate this message of understanding so you can free the mind. Okay. But freedom, I mean, Fred, what is it? What is that? If I asked you to define it for yourself, what does that mean?
Choice.
Okay. So no, that's fine. That's as far as we need to go. That's the answer that almost everyone gives me. I have, and 99.9% of the time, that's the answer. But I would challenge that, and I would say that choice implies actually no freedom, because the moment you choose a direction to go in, you have given up your freedom. So freedom goes away the moment you choose a certain direction. So to really truly be free, we can't have a methodology of how to perform the skill. So if we want to really learn how to access our body's natural intelligence, we can't put limitations on it by saying my left arm needs to be straight, my left hip needs to turn this way, my head needs to stay down. Those are all limitations. And if we watch all the best golfers throughout history, we can see that the guys who have won majors, the top guys, those swings do not look conventional. They would not be taught by a golf teacher. The Jim Furyk's, the Lee Trevinos, the Chichi Rodriguez's, Matthew Wolff. These swings, Bubba Watson, these swings all look unique. And the reason that these guys have, in my opinion, the reason these guys have really excelled is because they weren't instructed by teachers early on. They were allowed to develop naturally. And what that does is that's the movement that your body becomes comfortable trusting, especially under pressure. Whereas if you have had a natural swing, this is what I see happen in so many junior golfers. They'll come out there with their unusual Matthew Wolff swings and they can play great golf. And then all of a sudden their parents say, okay, let me get the best instructor for my kid because he's out there shooting 3 under par and he's going to be on the PGA Tour. They go to the instructor and the instructor says, well, he's got his elbow up and it needs to be down. He's got his left foot coming off the ground, it needs to be flat. And all of a sudden that natural movement that was very comfortable to do now becomes retarded in a sense, and they're forcing their bodies to move in a way that's not comfortable to them. And then all of a sudden, those scores that were 3 under go to 3 over. But the instructor says, no, but look, we're making progress. Look how good he looks. And we're using it as a visual as opposed to the result. And you see guys, and you just listen to them. I mean, one of the greatest, listen to Jim Furyk when he met, Arnold Palmer. Jim Furyk met Arnold Palmer, they met each other. And Jim Furyk's father said, what should he do? Is this swing that he has with his elbow going up and wrapping around, is this a problem? Arnold Palmer said, I wouldn't change a thing. I'd leave it just like it is. The only recommendation I have is I would switch to a reverse grip putting style. And if you notice, that's what Jim Furyk has adapted to his whole career. So those impressions, those listening to those teachers makes a huge difference in the child. And you can see Arnold Palmer said, why am I going to mess with this movement? This kid can strike the ball, can hit the ball, and it works. Just like Arnold Palmer had a very unusual swing. Looking, the traditional coach might say, this is not the way you want to swing it. I think that's the complete opposite way to be teaching the development of these motor skills, these complex motor skills. And I think that's why we see so many injuries in other sports today, such as baseball. Back in the early 1900s, guys would pitch 2-3 days in a row, full complete games, and they would never throw their arm out. Tommy John didn't come around until the second half of the 20th century here. So they didn't have these injuries. Well, why all of a sudden do we have all these injuries? Because all of a sudden coaches started looking at mechanics and they started saying, well, this is the proper way to sequence this movement to make this body move perfectly and operate optimally. And I look at that and I say, no, that may be true in a scientific way, but we're not designed like that. Our bodies need, if we don't have the exact one tendon developed in our elbow correctly, if we don't move it through the path that's comfortable for our movement, we're going to blow that out in in a few years. I mean, you can see it. Kids today at 10, 11, 12 years old are having Tommy John surgery. That's preposterous. Like, why is that happening? It's happening because every teacher is out there saying, these are the right mechanics. This is how you have to move. And we're not seeing a lasting movement. We're seeing things that hold up for a few innings, and the guy has to come out because we know he's going to blow his arm out. Same thing in golf.
Well, I think we didn't hear about the Tommy John surgery thing, and develop more and more because early on, because it would end people's careers. The Tommy John revitalized careers, right? So it's an interesting point, but I remember once asking somebody, how do you get good at golf? And he said, start when you're 6. And here you are saying you started at 4.
Mm-hmm.
I started at 42.
Okay.
Started playing golf. So I'm not going to I'm out there thinking all the time. It's a very different thing. I know that you can relate to, you can understand my position on this, but I can't understand yours because there's things that I did as a kid that I could still do today. My friends go, how do you do that? Well, I don't know. I just do it because I did it as a kid, and it's easy for me to do a backflip off the diving board, right? Or off the deck of a boat, right? I can do that. But I'm still, and one of the biggest problems of me doing this podcast and talking to all these teachers is I tinker way too much. And it's lately been really a problem for me, is that I'm tinkering and tinkering and tinkering. And I got myself down to a really nice single-digit handicap that I never thought I'd ever see. And then I started, but gee, if I do this, maybe if I tweak, let me listen to this teacher and it made this subtle change, it'll get me even farther. And it sends me in the other direction.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing that everyone says to me when I propose my understanding to them is like, well, yeah, that works for you because you had all that training, so it was easy for you to let go and develop. You already had the swing, so it was just a matter of freeing up the mind, and you were going to develop. And I tell them, I said, no. You have to understand, it's much harder for me than it is for the beginner. The beginner at any age, it's going to be much easier to do what I'm talking about than for me to have done it, because I already have all of the habits, all of the bad habits that I've programmed into my subconscious of how to move. So if I have one bad movement, it takes me 10 times as long for the person who's untrained to actually find their natural movements. My natural movements were covered up by so many artificial movements that I'd learned from all these different teachers about how to hold my elbows and grips and everything. I didn't put my hands on there naturally. I had been taught for years how to hold that grip in stronger fashion. Get a really strong grip on there and hold it like a baby bird and do all these. The beginner has no concept of that. So my favorite student is the complete beginner who has nothing in their brain pre-programmed about how they're supposed to do the golf swing. See, if you have all these ideas piled into your head about how it's supposed to work, and then I come and tell you to drop them all, that's like telling you that your religion is nonsense and you need to let go of all your religion. If you've been hammered in as a person over years and years and years, it's very difficult to let go of those ideas. So it was actually harder for me to develop this than it is when I take a complete beginner and say, okay, now here's what I want you to do. I want you to hit a fade. I don't know how to hit a fade. I know you don't. We're not going to do this in a technical aspect, but you'd be shocked. One of the things that I think is so important in developing proper mechanics, and we don't do it by saying elbow, there's no mechanical map. Instead, what I like to see is, okay, if you can hit a draw, if you can hit a fade, if you can hit the ball high and low in all the corridors of the golf swing. So if I step up and say, Fred, let me see you hit a fade. Let me see you hit a draw. Let me see you hit a low fade. Let me see you hit a low draw. If you can perform all those tasks, all those 6 quadrants, you have perfect mechanics. I don't care what anyone says. I don't need to look on a video to know you have proper mechanics if you can perform all the tasks, all the skills required to hit the golf ball through these different windows. And that's really what golf is controlling your golf ball. So how do we do that? How do I tell the complete beginner how to hit a fade? Well, what I'll do is I'll get them up there and I'll describe what a fade is. I'll say a fade is when the ball starts out to the left if you're a righty. The ball starts out left of your target, moves, and then moves back to the right and doesn't go past the target. So it has a nice curved shape to it. And they'll say, well, how do I get my body to do that? I said, you don't have to get your body to do that. Your brain is so smart and so intelligent that it can figure that out all by itself if you'll get out of the way. And the example I use is riding a bike or walking. Every person I've ever seen, it doesn't take any, I've never seen someone unable to walk. No one crawls. No one tries to walk as they're a child and says, I can't do this. I'm not smart enough. I'm just going to stick with crawling. It never happens. We all learn this skill. So it's not necessary for intelligence to dictate if we can walk or not. And so when you learn to walk, you hadn't the muscle developed, all you had, and you could not communicate with your parents at that age. You didn't have the development of speech yet. So no one could help you develop the skill. You were on your own. All you could do was observe what your parents and people around you were doing, and you just copied that. You saw the movement, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, let me try this, I guess. Because there was no thought, there was no speech going on. So that conversation actually didn't happen in your brain at that age. Your brain was quiet, and it just kept trying to perform the task over and over and over. You would fall, just like on a bicycle, you'd fall. No one can teach you how to ride a bicycle. There's no book written on a bicycle, how to ride it. It'd be preposterous. Okay, push down with this amount of force on the left foot, pull up on that foot, find your balance. That book is pointless. You have to fall down a few times in order to do that. Right. And so what happens in the golf swing is when I say hit this fade and I describe the shape of the shot, I say now walk up to the ball, tell your brain what you want it to do, see in your mind what you want that shape to be, and just let the body do it. Don't think about what you're doing. I don't care about what your grip does. All of that stuff is going to subtly change as your mind starts to allow it to perform the task. So the first one might be a dead hook. You might even whiff the ball on the first one. And then here's what I have learned over all these years about how important staying out of the process is. So after you hit that first bad shot, and I know you can relate to this because this is why you tinker, you hit the bad shot and you say, now what did I do wrong there? Mm-hmm. As if you had the answer to what you did wrong. If you had the answer what you could do wrong, you should be able to fix it on the next one, but you can't. So you keep going down this road of going down the rabbit hole of listening to your thoughts that you somehow have the answer to this solution, but you don't, or else you'd be a better than scratch golfer. What you have to do is, as soon as you make that mistake and the ball doesn't fade, you need to not do anything for trying to fix it. You need to say, okay, I don't know what happened there. It didn't fade. Brain, we want to see a fade. Try it again. And you'll be shocked after about 10 or 20 shots, that person who's never touched a golf club can all of a sudden hit a fade. And they'll look at me and they'll say, I don't know how I did that. I said, you don't want to know how you did it. That's the beauty of this. You want it to be like walking. You don't know how you walk. You just know that when you give attention to walking, you stop walking naturally. Have you ever walked down the street and thought about how you're walking? It becomes retarded in the sight. Your motion doesn't become natural anymore. You're thinking about how much you're lifting your left foot, how much you're lifting your right foot. But when we're just walking down the street talking, you're performing the task without any control whatsoever. And that's how you play your best golf. That's actually playing golf. You know, that's the biggest difference for me in my game is now when I play, I'm playing golf. I'm not thinking golf anymore. And that's what most golfers like you, when you're out there tinkering and, well, if I do this, I do. You're not playing golf. You're just thinking about golf. So you're really not enjoying the experience. I'm looking at the architecture of the course. I'm studying how the game, what the temperature is like out. I'm looking at the birds. I'm enjoying the whole process because I know my swing is naturally working. I don't have to interfere with this. I find the moment I interfere where I'm like, oh, what did I do there? It's just a rabbit hole you do not want to go down. And this is why golfers spend years and don't develop anywhere. They don't get any better. How many guys sit there you see at the range, work, and they might knock one shot off, two shots off. It's too much work to perform the skill. You learn to walk within 2 years. You're running at full speed. You didn't have to go and train with a teacher. You didn't have to do any of that to learn that super complex skill. Same with a bicycle. In a week, you're on the handlebars. Why does it take so long to develop the golf swing? because it's a static, we learn in a static position. The ball doesn't move. Other sports, we have to react. So our bodies are forced to move quickly and just react, where in golf, it's not a reactive sport. You sit there and you think over the ball, and that paralyzes the ability to actually move naturally.
We're going to take another time out. We'll be right back. Well, I can tell you that those 6 quadrants, I hit a fade. I hit a fade, and that's my natural ball flight. Could not hit a draw like maybe once every 4 or 5 rounds I'll hit a draw and go, how did that happen? What did I just do? Right?
So you can hit a draw.
So I have hit draws. I'm not going to say I can. I'm going to say I have hit a draw.
That's right. You just don't know how to control the draw. You don't know what causes the draw. Exactly.
No.
Because what you're doing is you're controlling the fade. So the reason you can hit a fade is because you repeat a motor pattern of movement in the mind that is the same over and over and over. And when the fade comes in there, that doesn't meet with your pattern of what you think is the right pattern of movement to make the ball fade, and it doesn't, and you're like, what's going on? That's where I'm saying that's where
I'm setting up to hit a fade.
But there's another misconception. See, this is what I'm saying. Everything you've been taught needs to be blown up in the sense of we can just look at the best players in the world. These are the people we want to study. We don't want to study Joe Schmo down the road who follows the instructional tapes. We want to look at the guys who week after week, year after year, compete at the highest level and their swings hold up. Now, if we look at certain guys, we look at all these different guys. If I look at a guy like Jordan Spieth, first, before I even go to him, what's the right grip? Who's going to tell you what the right grip is? Because I've watched all my life, I'll pick a guy like Jordan Spieth, his grip is very weak. Okay, it's a very weak grip. We look at a guy like Dustin Johnson, it's 180 degrees different because he has a super strong grip. Both of these guys perform at the highest level. So who am I as an instructor to tell you that that's the right grip? I'm not. That's the preposterous thing in the whole teaching. There is no right grip. All that's required is that you can hit through all those 6 quadrants, and then that's the right grip for you. And you can see that with Dustin Johnson can hit all those quadrants. Jordan Spieth can hit all those quadrants. But they have 2 totally different grips on the golf club.
So if I adjusted my grip, will I be able to hit a fade?
Well, you're going to have to. Well, that's what I'm telling you. Well, I'm telling you, when you get out there, if you want to hit a draw, you're going to have to get out there and you're going to have to fall down on the bicycle a few times for the draw to expose itself. And that might mean your hand have to change. All that happens naturally. It's not something you have to consciously do. You just have to tell the brain, hit a draw. And you'll get up there and it won't draw. Brain, hit a draw, won't draw. And if you don't do anything, the brain subconsciously kicks in, just like it did when you learned to ride the bicycle, and you will find that balance and you will find the movement that makes it draw. You won't know how to repeat that. That's the beauty. That's the subtlety of letting the mind and the subconscious take over. And we never do that in golf. We are constantly in control. Everyone I see is trying to control the movements instead of letting them just be free. And that's where I get back to the statement of freedom. I don't want to choose how I move my body. I just want to tell my body, I want to see that. I want to see that ball do that. Please perform that. And if you let go, the mind it's just genius. It's genius the way that it can perform those tasks.
After you had that round where you hadn't played for 6 months and you went out and just let your mind go blank and just hit the ball and let the body do what it naturally does, were you able to maintain that throughout your round and the next round and the next round without it getting in your head at all?
So the next day after I discovered this, I called up one of my top students. And I said, listen, I want you to check out something that I learned here. I'm just curious, because when you're a teacher, when you're really into something, you discover something, golf, you discover a movement, and then you're like, this is it, I can play now. This is the movement I want. And 2 weeks later, that movement doesn't work anymore. So
Yeah,
I
I know.
really,
I know.
I wasn't really sold on the fact that I had found something. I was just like, maybe I just found something that's going to last for a few weeks, like, or a few days, or maybe a few hours. I mean, sometimes you find something on the range, and by the end of the round, you've given up on it because it doesn't work anymore. So I didn't know I hadn't really realized how profound it was, but I definitely saw the result. So I told my student, I said, look, I want you to just check this out. And he goes, well, what do you want me to do? I said, I want you to do nothing. I want you to let go. And he goes, I don't understand. We've been working on this or this or this. I said, listen, trust me. Well, sure enough, as soon as he let go, within 2 weeks, we were qualifying for the U.S. Open. He was qualifying for the U.S. Open. He's never qualified before. I had also signed up to go for the U.S. Open. I was also doing theater at the time. I'd just taken a new job because I gave up golf. I had just taken a new job at theater. So my time was all wrapped up in theater. I wasn't going to get a chance to practice this. I told him to work on it. Let's see what happens, and we'll see how I perform at the Open as well, qualifying. I went out and missed the Open qualifying by 2 shots. One of my best performances ever. And as soon as I walked up the course, I said, my friend Lucas, my student, he's going to make it. There's no doubt about it because he's had 2 weeks to practice this. I haven't had any time to practice, and I almost did it. Sure enough, he calls me up. He goes, I shot a 67. I'm into the next round of qualifying. Mm-hmm. He goes, will you come and caddy for me? I said, absolutely. So then I drove down to Memphis, and we qualified in Memphis for the second stage of qualifying is a 36 hole test of golf. You play 36 holes in one day, and the top guys in that then are in the U.S. Open. And that year was being played at Oakmont. I went down there to caddy for him. Now, what makes Memphis such a unique qualifying site is that's the same week that the PGA Tour is in Memphis as well, playing their tournament. So what they do in Memphis is if you qualify in Memphis, because I was living in Arkansas, that's why we chose Memphis. But if you're in Memphis, most other sites around the country, the other sectional qualifyings, they only allow 3 or 4 players from each place to advance to the U.S. Open. But in Memphis, they allow 20 players because all the PGA Tour players are there. So they want PGA Tour players on the tour in the U.S. Open. They don't want me at the U.S. Open. They want the big name. So all the guys who weren't in the top 50 have to qualify, and they're all doing it in Memphis. So when we get there and we show up, it's everybody who's outside the top 50 at the driving range. I mean, these are the best of the best we're playing against. This is these are the guys who you see on TV. It was just mind blowing to see all these guys, and we're about to go and play. So we get to the middle of the range, and Lucas starts to warm up. And sure enough, Lucas, as soon as he starts hitting the flag stick at 100 yards, just banging it off the flag stick. He hits like 4 of them off the flag stick, and everybody stops and looks and like, what is going on? He just stopped. He's like, he goes, it's freaking me out. He goes, I can't do this thing. Why? He's like, let's go pot and chip. I can't do it. It's too crazy.
Too much
pressure.
We go.
Too much pressure. So then we get out there on the course. So that day, there's 2 courses there, but I forget the name of the course, but the first course is much harder than the second course. And that day we shot a 66, and the closest competitor was Brant Snedeker. He shot a 69. So we crushed the field at this tournament. On one of the holes, on the 14th hole, Lucas hits the ball, and I said, "Oh, that's good." He goes, "That's perfect." I go, "Yeah, it's perfect." It hits the hole and blows the hole. It goes right in the hole in 2 for an eagle and blows the hole out. They have to come and put the hole in the ground because he blew it apart. It landed so perfectly. It just exploded the hole when it landed.
Wow.
By the end of the day, we had a whole group of people following us. It was
I bet.
It was mystical. I mean, this is when you're getting the mind to operate at the highest level. This is what potential is out there for you.
This is unfortunately kingdom stuff.
Yeah, it really was. And the reason you never heard of this happening was because when we walked off the 18th hole, the rules official came up and disqualified Lucas and said he was kicked out of the tournament. And the reason behind it was they said on the first hole, the 10th and the first hole run adjacent to each other. and they were going off both tee boxes that day. And the fairway goes over a little hill. Well, someone on the 10th hole had sliced their ball into our fairway and landed right next to our ball. Well, it turns out when we got done, they said, pull out your ball. We pulled out our ball. And he goes, is that your ball? He goes, yeah, Titleist 4 with a green dot. And they pulled out of their pocket another Titleist 4 with a green dot. And they said, you guys were both playing a Titleist 4 with a green dot. And the marshal says he saw you each hit the wrong ball. You're disqualified. And so Lucas never got to play in the U.S. Open.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
And there was no video evidence of this.
No.
There's no disputing. Oh, same color green. I mean, just.
That is a lesson in making sure you mark your ball so you know it's your ball. It was a hard lesson to learn.
I'm going to go cry for a minute. I'll be right back. All right, Noah, how do we get there?
You get there by practice. And again, if you don't have the years and years of practice that I had, you've got to get out there to the range and put the hard work in just like anyone else. Just like the child learning to walk, you don't learn to walk on the first day. There's going to be some stumbles and you're going to fall. But the process can be so much quicker if the mind is clear and it understands, if you understand how the mind is sabotaging your development through thought. And thinking that control is the answer, when control is actually not the answer in this situation. The mind is great for mechanical things like building a computer, things that aren't physical in nature. But when they become a physical action that you have to learn, that's where the subconscious works better than thought. Thought is a very limited process. Thought is necessary. We need thought to remember how to get home and how to work a computer and those kind of things, but it doesn't help us in the development of our physical skills. So what we have to learn is, okay, I need, the biggest thing I try to tell people is as we grow up, we're taught what to learn. We're taught what to think. We're not taught how to think, right? We're taught what to think. They tell us in the books, read this, do this. We're not taught how to use that machinery of thought. We've never given that skill growing up. So that's what the big epiphany for me was when I said, oh, what happens if I don't use this process of thought? Then everything opened up for me. And so that's how you start. You start by recognizing that you've been going around the hamster wheel thinking that I'm going to think my way out of this by using all these little tips, when in actuality you can't. A quick breakdown of thought and its limitations. What is thought? If we look at the structure of what a thought is, first we have an experience. We have the experience of turning left with our hips and having our hands in a certain position, and that creates the shot we're looking for. So we automatically assume through thought, because we have that experience, then we create a memory, right? We're like, oh, that is what I did, and that made the ball do that. So we had an experience, then we created a memory in our mind, and then that is what knowledge is. So now we think we have knowledge, and we draw a conclusion from that knowledge. Oh, well, if I turn my hip hard and I keep my hands out here, that creates the straight shot. The problem is that thought, that experience is very limited. If you really look at it, that might have been what you were feeling, but there were so many more movements that were going on there that you were unaware of. Your weight might have been to the back leg more than another time. Your head could have went up and down. There's so many pieces of the puzzle when you're in movement. There's hundreds of moving parts, but we can only be focused on one or two of them while we're swinging. I mean, you can't think about 6 or 7 things while you're swinging the golf club. It's too fast. So thought, if we look at it, is very limited in its scope in developing all these hundreds of complex movements. That's why I say when you recognize its limitation, then you just step away from it. And you're like, oh, thought's great for this, but it's not great for this. Then you can approach learning in a whole different way. Now you step up to the ball and you say, okay, I'm not going to sit here and buy into the experience that it felt like my my left hip was going fast and my arms were coming through like this. But I know that that's misleading. I know that, as you hear many instructors actually say, feel isn't real, right? Because it leaves you. You felt it. You like, okay, if I turn my hips at the top of my swing first and all of a sudden that works, within 2 days, that doesn't work anymore. That's because all these other processes were going on in combination with that hip turning first that you can't feel. And that's why if you let go of that process of thought and you just get up there and say, brain, hit me that fade nice and high. I want to see a high fade. You know how rewarding it is when you step up there and you say, brain, hit me a high fade. And after 10 shots of you not trying to make that happen, not trying to stand closed, not trying to stand open, not trying to make any adjustments, just allowing the brain to figure it out. And then all of a sudden it does it and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that's what I've been looking for. I've been looking in all the wrong places for that, because you only have your limited experiences that you can base your understanding off of. So that's why we're constantly looking on YouTube at different instructors, to get more knowledge. But unfortunately, that knowledge is not going to help you in the development of that skill. And that's where we get back to when you said about, oh, I set up for a fade. A lot of people believe, okay, if I set up with my stance open, that's how you hit a fade or a draw or anything. You look at a guy like Freddie Couples. Freddie Couples stood 30 yards left of the target line, but yet he can hit draws and fades from that same position. Well, that goes against everything every teacher says. You've got to be close to this target if you want to hit a draw. You've got to be open to hit a fade. Listen, I'll get you out there. I'll show you. I can stand closed, opened, cross-footed, one-footed. I can hit all those shots in any position you put me in. They all don't operate perfectly. Like, there's definitely a function with it. The body functions in a more athletic motion if you stand in a more athletic posture. But you can still perform the task. If you go on my YouTube or my YouTube and on Instagram, you'll see all the different shots I can perform from all different positions. The idea that there's a right way to stand to hit a fade, a right way to hit a draw, there's a right grip, all these things are just preposterous to me. I mean, now that I've actually seen that you can do all these things without those things, and again, watching the best players in the world, they all perform this task differently. No two golf swings are the same. They're just not. So to think that someone's going to say, this is how it should be done and you should follow this way, it drove me really crazy to see Tiger Woods get ruined by going to all these instructors. He chased mechanics. He chased mechanics for his whole career and just deteriorated his whole body. I mean, if you look at Jack Nicklaus, he stuck with one teacher his whole life and didn't deviate from those movements. He just said, this is basic. This is simple. Tiger never did that. He just kept obsessing about mechanics and movement. And it just never, he won in spite of that. That's how good Tiger Woods was, that he won in spite of those poor mechanics.
Well, you brought up Jordan Spieth earlier, and it's like he must be doing something wrong now, because I mean he had that miraculous year, and then it just seems like he's a little bit lost since.
All it takes, like I said, is you saying one time, "Oh, this feels good," and then saying, "Well, why?" And obsessing about one direction. You can go off that down that rabbit hole really quick. I mean, we've seen it with many different golfers throughout history. Look at David Duval. Guy couldn't be beat. Now he can't even play golf anymore. Like, I mean, he's not even competitive anymore. What happened? Amazing. Obviously, something got into his mind. It wasn't his physical ability. He's not injured. There's something psychological that got in there, some thought, some process that he thinks is correct, and he couldn't let go of that to get back to the natural state of playing at the high level.
Well, I asked you a question earlier, and you gave a very detailed and thoughtful answer, and I really appreciate that. But actually, the answer to the question of how do we get there, which I was expecting you to do, but since I teed you up and you didn't follow through on your swing, I'll just say you get the book, Peaceful Golf, A Journey into the Unknown. Right.
Absolutely. Everything is in there about how I basically, in the book, I just tell you what I went through and what I share with all my students and how I watch them progress. And, it's basically like learning to walk. There is no formula. It's, like you asking me, how do I get there? That's like asking a baby to every day work on his walking. It doesn't work like that. it's a natural process that if you get up there and it's like, hey, what does your mom do when you're a baby? She finally lets go of your hands and backs up 2 steps. Well, that's what I do with the student. I say, look, here's what I want you to perform. Here's the skill I'm asking you to perform. We start out with a small distance. We start out close to the hole and we slowly progress outward. As I've broken down the game, I've learned that there are certain things, also what's important is determining what you as a golfer, what your goal is. That's the first thing. What do I want to accomplish in this game? Do I want to be a single digit handicap? Do you recognize how much time is required to be a single digit handicap? Read my book and learn about how much I practice to get to my level. That's a pretty good gauge of how long it's going to take you to get better. It takes a long time to develop the skill to, one of the best analogies for a golf swing is the sweet spot on a golf club is about the size of a penny. Okay. And the sweet spot on a golf ball, when you compress a golf ball against the club, that ball that you're actually touching, that compression spot is about the size of a penny. You can see that when the dew is outside and you hit the ball and you can see the mark left by it. Well, that means you have to match a penny, 2 pennies going 100 miles an hour. They have to match up perfectly for you to be able to perform this skill. And that penny is being matched on a 6-foot arc. Okay. So we're talking about some of the most precise physical movements that a human being can do. The only thing I've ever heard that this was even close to was figure skating, competitive figure skating. That's how precise we're trying to perform a skill here. So you got to be honest with yourself and say, well, what do I want to really accomplish in this game? Do I want to just have fun and get around the golf course and be able to enjoy myself and play peacefully? That's the title of my book, A Journey into the Unknown, because most golfers are not peaceful. They're out there in total conflict with themselves because they feel one thing and it's not performing the way they want. And once you let go of that and you start to develop, you start to say to yourself, okay, I want to develop, here's where I want to get to. And you start breaking down the game. There was a great YouTube or TED Talk. A gentleman had asked the question, how long does it take me to become really good at a skill, like become a master? And we've learned a little bit. I think there's been a few studies done on it.
Right? Is that the
right?
10,000 hours? Yeah.
10,000 hours. And that's, it's not scientific, but that's a pretty good assessment. That's about 10 years of solid work. But then this guy in the TED Talk came along and he said, well, what if I don't want to be a master? What if I just want to be proficient at that skill? Like I just want to I don't want to be a master guitarist. I just want to learn to play guitar. How long does that take? Mm-hmm. And what he discovered was it takes 20 hours to become proficient at a skill. Now, it's not sitting down and working for 20 hours to become proficient at that skill. What he learned was if you break that skill down to its basics, to the very basics that you're trying to accomplish, and then you work on it in a very structured period for like 40 minutes a day over a 30-day period, at the end of 30 days, you are proficient at that skill. So that's what I've done in my teaching. When I get someone in that, I said, look, you have 30 days. You want to commit to 40 minutes a day for 30 days. You will be a proficient golfer. You will have some control over your golf ball. You'll understand how much power and how to finesse the ball around the golf course, and you can become adept at playing this game. But again, like anything, you have to commit some time to it. It's not going to be just because you pay me $500 for the afternoon to teach you that I can somehow wave a wand over you and you're going to be the greatest golfer in the world. It's not going to happen. And anyone that says
really?
It is no, man, unfortunately.
Come on, man.
But I mean, that's what they do with you. That's what they do at golf schools. It's 3 days of an intensive golf school for $2,000, and somehow you're going to come out a better golfer. That's you're going to come out with a lot of knowledge, but you're not going to be much better in your movement. You just can't do that.
You're going to go downhill for the next 6 months.
Well,
likely, because you're changing everything, and now you got to start all over. And it's like,
if you're chasing mechanics, you will. If you're chasing mechanics, of course. Yeah. But what I'm asking you to really understand is the brain can develop so quickly. The best example is riding a bicycle. Yeah. Within a day of finding your balance on a bicycle, you are totally comfortable. You can get that bike going as fast as you want. And once you understand balance, the training wheels are off. But unfortunately, that's not how golf and that's not how most mechanical movements are being taught. They're being taught through control and mechanical movements, and this is the proper technique, and you should do it this way. And I say that's preposterous to me. After I've seen what I can do without any thought, and what I can see complete beginners do without any thought, that at the end of a lesson they can hit a draw and they can hit a fade, that tells me everything I need to know about the progression of how powerful the mind is in development.
Well, I got to work on strangling the monkey mind that goes on inside here. Well, we have so much more to discuss, so I hope that we can get you back on, because your blog, Top 100 Courses, is fascinating, and you're a course rater for Golf Week magazine, and I'm fascinated by that as well. So, can we get you back on?
Absolutely. I love to talk about golf architecture. Once I gave up on the mechanics of the game, my mind was kind of free to start looking around at these courses and saying, wow, these courses are pretty amazing. I was never really focusing on them because all I was thinking about was my golf swing. So now so now when I go to play golf, I'm actually studying the golf course and the architecture and what the architects were looking for. And yeah, it's a whole other topic that I would love to talk about with you sometime for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and your explanation, and congratulations.
Thank you.
We will put a link to the book on Amazon or to your website. We'll put them in today's blog post. Again, the book is called Peaceful Golf, A Journey into the Unknown, and the website is peaceful-golf.com.
Yeah, and I've also got a YouTube channel where I've got a bunch of videos there about the swing. And so if you're interested in starting in the swing of taking the peaceful approach, check out those videos as well. There's a lot of instructional stuff out there I put. And
social media, Instagram at Peaceful Golfer, at Peaceful Golf.
At Peaceful Golf.
Instagram.
Yep.
Yeah. You got a lot of photography there too.
It's another passion of mine. I love photography. I love art. If you read my book, you'll see that, like I said, golf is just one of the ways that this understanding of the mind has changed my whole life. But art is another fascinating topic as well that we should talk about sometime as well.
Great. Noah Pilipski, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Fred.
Okay, we got a lot to talk about today. Let's start with some pretty exciting news. Now, according to Chartable.com, it's a service that provides daily podcast analytics. They said that in the all-time ranking of golf podcasts, Golf Smarter is number 1 in Spain, Japan, and Italy, number 2 in Australia, Germany, France, and Denmark, number 3 in the United States and Great Britain, and number 4 in Canada and Sweden. Yesterday we were number 2 in the United States, but today we're number 3. The reason I'm reporting that is just to say that I am humbled by your continued support, and thank you very much for listening. Now, next up in our prize giveaways is a chance to win a pair of Squares golf shoes. We were first introduced to Squares on episode 736 back in April 2020. So if you want to hear more about the shoes, that's the best way to do it. It was with the founder of Squares, Bob Winskowitz. Since then, they made a huge announcement that Sir Nick Faldo has partnered with the company after saying that these are the best golf shoes he's ever worn. Check them out at squares.com, and Squares is SQAIRZ.com. Deadline to enter to win is this Sunday, November 15, midnight Pacific time, 3 a.m. Eastern. Just click on the Enter Now banner at the top of the homepage at golfsmarter.com. And don't forget, use GolfSmarter10 at checkout at squares.com to get $10 off your first pair of shoes there. Now, lastly, can we sit down and have a conversation for a moment? I've got something on my mind that I want to share with you. A few episodes back, I reported that my friend Neil and I had this 3-round tournament at different courses over 4 days. The scoring went like this: 2 points for stroke play, 2 points for the least putts, 1 point for match play. I took round 1, 5-0. Neil took round 2, 5-0. And for round 3, we split on stroke play, both scoring 83. Neil beat me on match play, but I had 1 fewer putt, taking the round 3-2 and winning our little tournament 8-7. Yippee me. But I couldn't celebrate it. I just didn't revel in it. I don't know why. But for that 3rd round, I didn't sleep well the night before. My hands were shaking really badly. Well, putting on the first green, got that taken care of over time. And now my prize was getting to pick a round of golf anywhere I wanted as long as it costs under $150. Well, since then, we've played 4 more rounds and continued this competition with the winner either adding or subtracting $10 based on those 5 points. Well, Neil has beat me soundly each time. I've talked a lot about this over the years, but I'm not a fan of gambling. I don't like playing for money, and once competition starts, I clearly get pretty anxious. Of course, I understand that golf is a gambling game, but frankly, I'm much better playing against myself and with others than the other way around. That's actually why I was excited to speak to Noah in today's episode, because between my tinkering, the constantly trying out new gear, and being on information overload from all these interviews, I'm lost when I step up to the ball, and I have zero confidence in my game right now. So I've been at places where I had total confidence. Earlier in the summer, I got my index down to a 7.3, and now I'm back up to nearly a 12. So I've decided to take a break from playing till after the first of the year, which is kind of why I wish that I lived somewhere that only gets 7 months a year of golf instead of here in California, where during our round on November 5th, it was 83 degrees. I promise this won't impact Golf Smarter. I promise you, because I need to find ways to absorb the information without obsessing over it. That's why today's episode with Noah and the next 2 Mulligans episodes featuring Fred Shoemaker are perfect to get my head straight once again. Have you ever had that happen to you? How did you get out of it? How do you deal with it? Let me know, because if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, I'd love to hear from you. Just click on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com. Thanks.